Good afternoon. My name is Markeisha Smith. I am one of your fellow classmates here in Dr. Hematis Creating a Nation class in 2021. Today, my person of interest who I have chosen to do my project on is John Adams. John Adams was the second president of the United States. He was also the vice president under President George Washington, who was the first president. He served 2 terms. He was also a political philosopher. He was a activist during the American Revolution. He was a lawyer. He was a writer, and he was a father. So, John Adams was born in October 30th of 1735. He was the oldest son of John and Susanna Adams, and they had 3 sons. For his education, he did attend Harvard College, and he graduated in 1755. John taught there for several years after his graduation due to being hired by Reverend Thaddeus McCarthy, who was impressed by his commencement, so he hired him on to be a teacher there. And so in 1758, he began his career of being a lawyer, and he was one of the most well-known attorneys in Boston. So he was very good at his job. And further into the presentation, I'll give an example of what he did as a lawyer. So his family life. John Adams was married to Abigail Smith in 1764. And they did have 6 kids, of which 4 of the children survived and they lived. One of which became a future president. His son, John Quincy Adams, was the 6th president of the United States. And Abigail Adams, she was an important person in history as well in her own right, to where the letters that she wrote to John Adams while he was away at extended periods of time, like when he was in Paris, he wrote her letters. And one of the most memorable letters is the one she wrote, Remember the Ladies. She wrote this to him and the members of Congress when they were writing and fighting for the American Revolution. She told him to remember the ladies when they were changing the nation. Whew, legendary works. So, also another notable moment. Their love story was it was deemed one of the greatest love stories in American Revolution, because of the love they had with the letters. But so his legendary works and how Adams began earning his place in history. So he did write a dissertation on canon and feudal law in 1765. He wrote it anonymously. And he did begin challenging Great Britain's authority in America. He didn't agree with the high taxes and tariffs, and he saw this as oppression, but he still remained somewhat loyal to the crown in a sense, as to where he did defend some of the British soldiers, but we'll get to that also. And so he wrote the Braintree Instructions, which affirmed the unconstitutionality of taxation without representation. And so those instructions, they were used in about 40 towns in Massachusetts. They adopted those instructions. And after this came the Stamp Act. And so after the French and Indian War, which we learned about in this class also, Great Britain needed a way to recoup or revamp their money that they had spent to protect them from the Indians. And so due to the fact that the colonists benefited from the French and Indian War, they felt it only fair to impose a tax on them. And the thing about the Stamp Act is the Stamp Act was already in place in the first place. They really needed the money at this time, so they kind of put it in action. They're serious about it now, and they need their money. And so the colonists, they did not like this. They did not like the taxation without representation. They were putting taxes on newspapers, papers, stamps, dice, almanacs, legal documents, anything that, had writing on it. And they wanted them to pay for it. Nothing was free. So then came the Boston Massacre. So, the Boston Massacre, he pretty much defended the soldiers later on that had killed some of the American colonists. And in his defending them, he was stating that the soldiers were pretty much defending themselves, that they didn't have a choice. And so 6 of the 8 soldiers were acquitted that he defended in court. So I guess, that was pretty good on his behalf. He won his case. And this was also the massacre that killed Crispus Attucks. Okay, so during his term on Congress, Adams attended the first and second Continental Congress in Philadelphia as a Massachusetts delegate, and he started becoming an active leader in the American Revolution. And in his whole term, he did sit in nearly 90 Continental Congress meetings, including the meeting to draft and eventually sign the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so while he was in Congress, he did write Thoughts on Government. He helped to designate and design the 3 branches of American government, which we know as the executive, judicial, and legislative branches. He was elected president of the Congress Board of War, and he wrote the Plan of Treaties to begin alliance with Europe. And of course, we all know in 1776, he signed the Declaration of Independence, and this was when America officially declared itself separate from Great Britain. In 1778, he helped negotiate the Treaty of Paris along with John Jay and Benjamin Franklin. And during all of this, he served as the Minister of Great Britain. So, during his lifetime, he did run for president 3 times, and 2 times he lost, but he really should have lost 3, but that's neither here nor there. Adams was vice president for Washington. He didn't like nor did he appreciate his job. He hated his job so much that it goes down in history in his complaining to his wife, Abigail, and stating that my country has, in its wisdom, contrived for me the most insignificant office that has ever the invention of man contrived or his imagination conceived. So he pretty much felt like he was wasting his time, and he doesn't even know who thought this up, but he doesn't appreciate the job. And so he was elected president on his 3rd time for running for office, and he won only because of electoral college votes. He did not win the popular vote, but he was elected president. And so during his presidency, his most notable events were the XYZ affair. And the XYZ affair was during the Quasi-War? Pause. Alrighty, so during the XYZ affair, the French and Britain were at war, and it was affecting Americans trading. And so Adams sent delegates to France to try and negotiate a treaty so that they could stop the war, but instead, XYZ, which were three French delegates or spies, they said, well, hey, if you pay us this amount of money, then we'll stop harassing and stealing your ships. And this upset the Americans to the core. They were very upset about it. They wanted to go to war about it. But John Adams had to make the decision that he thought was best for the American people, and he said no. The American economy was getting better. You know, they were recovering from all the wars that they had already had, and things, he was trying to clean things up. So he said, no, we won't do that. And so that goes down as one of his notable moments for his presidency. Also, another moment, he did sign and create the U.S. Navy Department in April of 1988. During the Quasi-War, they, I guess, recommended a lot of ships, and the British helped them to get the materials that they need to build the ships to go to war and to defend the United States so that they could keep trading back and forth and things of that nature. And so another notable moment, which was the reason why he was not nominated pretty much for another term, was the Alien and Sedation Act. And the reason why the Alien and Sedation Act helped to ruin, pretty much any chance that he may have had in the future for running for presidency again was because they put into place that anyone that verbally voiced or showed their approval for the government, the president, for the federal laws, for anything that had to do for the betterment of the nation, if they voiced that they did not like something, they had them arrested or they had them deported. And the reason why this upset the colonists was because everyone that was in America was an alien. Nobody was originally from here. So for him to, pretty much say, well, hey, anybody that uses their freedom of speech and, they felt it was going against the First Amendment and they did not appreciate that. So that pretty much sealed his fate for not becoming government a second term, which he did not. He ran against his opponent, Thomas Jefferson, whom he did want to run with him when he won his presidency, and Thomas Jefferson didn't want anything to do with him. So, he lost. And another notable event for John Adams is he was the first president to live in the White House. Now, the White House was, George Washington, he came up with the plans for the White House, and he came up with the site and location for the White House, but he never lived there. And so John Adams was the first president to live there while they were still building it, and it wasn't finished. They were still building the White House when he lived there. So, and he wasn't there for very long. And so, in I've been talking for a minute. In James Adams' retirement, he wrote his own biography, and he had a pretty good retirement to, have been a president. He lived to enjoy some of his life, or the rest of some of his life, with his wife Abigail Williams before she died at age 73 of the typhoid fever. I believe I said that right. He also lived to see his son John Quincy Adams become the 6th elected president of the United States. He also ended up kind of befriending Thomas Jefferson. He did write letters to him for, I think, about 10 years when he wrote letters to him. And another interesting fact is they both died on the same day. They were not friends during his presidency, for a short time after, and he started writing letters to him, and they were good pen pal buddies. So that's a notable fact. And they died on the same day. And it was 50 years after the Declaration of Independence was first started and signed. So I hope you learned something in my presentation. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed retaining this information. If you have any thoughts or concerns, please share them below. If I don't know the answer, I will look it up. But thank you for listening to my presentation. Have a nice summer.